Get going there. Okay, looks good. As I said, we are in Parsha Balak tonight. Of course, Balak is a king. And Balak is the king of what people? Because this is really important. It has a lot. It's definitely what I would call relative to what we're going to be talking about tonight. What people is Balak related to? Let me go back. Huh? No. To who? No. You're looking too fast. You're right, that is the first people mentioned in that passage, but it's not who Balak is related to. The Moabites. And who are the Moabites? Who are the Moabites? Anybody? I'm actually trying to look to see if I can find it real quick here. But as some of you know, when Lot was drug out of Sodom and Gomorrah because he did not want to leave. Isn't that awful? Think about that. He's in a wicked town where people are not pleasing God. And God said, it's time to go. And he's like, well, yeah, but I've got all these things I need to resolve and take care of. And he's like, but we're destroying the city. I know, but I've got these things I got to take care of. And so he eventually flees, and as some of you know, he asked God to give him a little town. And he called the town Zoar. But that wasn't its original name. Some of you may remember that God said that he was going to destroy 5 cities on that day. And now, of course, as you know, because you've heard me talk about it a lot, we know how he destroyed it. He brought in a meteorite that literally blew up over the Dead Sea. And when it blew up, stony meteorites are made up of a large percentage of pure elemental sulfur. Well, when that meteorite blew up, and it's pure elemental sulfur, a lot of it, and it's high temperature heated, that means it's going to be on fire as it's falling out of the sky, which elemental sulfur burns at a very high temperature. And so as it rained sulfur down on that city that day, we call that brimstone in the Bible, but that's what God did. We know that God was originally planning to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah and Admah and Zeboim and Bela. And Bela, by the way, is the one that Lot calls Zoar. Bela. And so that little town of Bela, Lot said, I want it, Lord. And the Lord said, you can have it. And so God changed the trajectory of that meteorite out of reverence to Lot's prayer. And as I've told you before, to me that tells us a lot about the power of prayer. Yeah. Because one man stopped a meteorite from destroying a little town called Bela. And I know they don't know that they got delivered, but we know they got delivered. We know that God looked down upon them and said, okay, because of this godly man saying that he's going to go and live there. Now, by the way, why was he godly? Because he had the righteousness of God, not because of necessarily the way he was living. Sometimes we think about, well, you don't understand, but I keep all these rules and I do all these things. And it's honestly, it's a good thing for us to be holy. It's a good thing for us to walk in God's ways. But the reason why we're right before God, and even the reason why we're called righteous ones, is because of what Christ did for us, not because of what we've done. Because every man at his best state, the Word of God says, is altogether vanity. Every man at his best state is altogether vanity. But anyway, when he asked for that little town, he didn't stay there very long, is what the Bible tells us. For actually a very, very short time, he stayed in Bela. And then eventually he leaves and he goes and stays in a cave with his 2 daughters. And his 2 daughters, worried that they're never going to get married and have children, decide to have children by their father after they get him drunk. And so what are the names of the children? Moab, which means from my father. So who are the Moabites? Well, they're descendants of Lot through his daughter. And the other one are the Ammonites, which are also going to come up, by the way, in this passages that we're reading. But the Ammonites are also going to be talked about. And what does the word Ammon mean? It means my people. The A-M is the word for people, and the M-O-N is the Hebrew word for my, so my people. And so she has children by her father and calls it my people. And so why I bring this up is because you realize that means that not only do we have Abraham, a righteous person, but we have an extended family member, also of Abraham, named Lot, who ends up having children by his daughter, who technically could be considered righteous people. But in our story tonight that we're going to get to, we're going to find out that those people are actually going to have a problem. They're going to have a problem with the people of Israel, and they're going to want them destroyed. And ultimately, what's going to happen? Well, the Moabites are going to get destroyed. They're literally going to be cut off from the face of the earth. Now, I bring it up because if you wonder how important it is that we pray for our children, that we lead our children in a right path, that we teach our children the truth, it didn't take very many generations to go from Lot having a couple children by his daughters to those children's descendants turning away from God wholesale, seeking to hire somebody to curse their relatives who are trying to pass through the area. And they're related. It's not like they are distantly related. They're actually pretty closely related, and yet they're asking for a man of God to come and curse these people for them. And so that's why I said it's important that we understand who these people are. If you start over in Numbers chapter 22 and verse 1, now that we've kind of introduced what we're going to be talking about here in Parsha Balak. Parsha Balak includes Numbers 22:2 to Numbers 25:9. And as I've taught you before, there's also something that the Jews study each Friday night or Saturday morning that's called the Haftarah. And the Haftarah is the passages usually that are coming from the prophets. And the Haftarah for this particular passage, which Haftarah Balak, is Micah 5:6 to Micah 6:8. Micah 5:6 to Micah 6:8. Does anybody know what Micah 6:8 says? I find it interesting. The reason why this is related to it, by the way, is because this passage talks about Balak and Balaam. But when it gets to the very end, Micah 6:8 says, "He hath showed thee, O man, what is good, and what doth the Lord require of thee, but to do justice, and to love mercy, and to walk humbly with thy God." That's the last verse of the Haftarah for tonight. And so we're supposed to do God's command, keep God's commandments, and we're supposed to fear God and keep His commandments, for this is the whole of man. The temptation of Balaam, by the way, not of the people, the temptation of Balaam is here in this passage, Numbers chapter 22, verse 1. The children of Israel set forward and pitched in the plains of Moab on this side Jordan by Jericho. And Balak, the son of Zippor, saw all that Israel had done to the Amorites. Now, the Amorites, by the way, were not related to them. But these people are. These people are related to Israel. The Amorites are not. And Moab was sore afraid of the people because they were many. And Moab was distressed because of the children of Israel. And Moab said unto the elders of Midian, "Now shall this company lick up all that are round about us, as the ox licketh up the grass of the field." And Balak, the son of Zippor, was king of the Moabites at that time. He sent messengers therefore, unto Balaam, the son of Beor, to Pethor, which is by the river in the land of the children of his people, to call him, saying, "Behold, there is a people come out of Egypt. Behold, they cover the face of the earth, and they abide over against me." Now, Balaam, by the way, his name means that he's a foreigner. That's an interesting name to have. It just says that I'm not of your people. I'm a foreigner. But it says, come now therefore, verse 6, I pray thee, curse me this people, for they are too mighty for me. Peradventure I shall prevail, that we may smite them, and that I may drive them out of the land. For I wot that he whom thou blessest is blessed, and he whom thou cursest is cursed. And the elders of Moab and the elders of Midian departed with the rewards of divination in their hand. And they came unto Balaam and spake unto him the words of Balak. Now, by the way, this was pretty common in these days. And you say, what is that? To give rewards of divination. If some of you remember later on, we're actually going to find another story very similar to this, and that is when Saul is looking for his father's animals that have run away. And he cannot find them. And what does he do? He says to his servant, do we have any money with us? And he says, yes, master, I have a little. And he said, good, let's go find the prophet. He lives in this city. And let's go ask him where our animals are. And he needs something to give to that prophet. And you say, well, why would they do that? Because the prophet made his money by being a servant to the people on behalf of God. So he'd be the one that would go before God and say, God, this is what their needs are. This is what's going on. Give me wisdom in knowing how to give them direction to their life, or what they should do, or where they should go. And so what I'm saying is this is not necessarily a bad thing. We know that that's even the reason why when the Jewish people would come and bring their offerings to the tabernacle, or they'd bring their offerings to the temple, that's the way that the priests, the Kohen, were able to make a living. Was those people taking care of them, because their job was what? To be that minister, to be the go-between. And so I'm not against that, by the way. But what am I against? I am against when that becomes what we pursue, what we chase. And realize sometimes, even as the servant of the Most High God, we get that way. Where we start looking at our income and our outgo and we say, I need to do something about this. Sometimes it's because we have needs that we've created that we shouldn't have created. I say needs, we should say wants. Because God's promised to provide for all of our needs. He hasn't promised to provide for all of our wants. And sometimes our wanter gets so big that it becomes a problem. And so it's something that we need to be careful of, especially when we're the children of the Most High God. And you say, why? Because again, we have that expectation that God's going to take care of us, that He loves us, that He knows what our needs are, and that He's going to provide for those needs. But sometimes we go beyond that, and we start wanting things that really aren't what God wants for us. And we start chasing those things, and what do we start doing? We start giving up certain things in our life, chasing after those embellishments in our life, right? Those improvements in our life. I'm thinking even of, right now, of our president, who a lot of things are coming out now that people are realizing that he's got dementia. Now they're willing to acknowledge things that they've known for a long time. And what is that? That he's been selling his influence for a long time. So has other people. We just know, just this last week, a very famous senator, I believe he was, just got found out guilty with a whole bunch of charges for what? Peddling influence. Taking gold bars and silver bars and copper and all different kind of precious metals and stocks and different things in order to vote in a certain direction. Now, I know for some of us, to us, that's obvious. Well, that's obviously wrong. Well, what about when we start pursuing after money as our number one goal of life? What about when we start saying, but I have to chase after this because I'm getting old and I need to make sure that I'm taking care of my future life and all that? I'm in that category. I know that there's a limit to the number of days that I can work and that I can save. But at the same time, how much am I willing to chase after those things in order for that? You know what I mean? It's one thing to say, I'm going to try to provide for the future. I think God teaches us we're supposed to do that. But at the same time, we can let those things get out of control, right? We can begin to seek after things more than we should be seeking after them. And I look at this story and I see a man who did those very things. It says that they came to Balaam at the end of verse 7 and spake unto him the words of Balak. And he said unto them, Lodge here this night, and I will bring you word again, as the Lord shall speak unto me. And the princes of Moab abode with Balaam. And God came unto Balaam and said, What men are these with thee? And Balaam said unto God, Balak the son of Zippor, king of Moab, has sent unto me, saying, Behold, there is a people come out of Egypt, which covereth the face of the earth. Come now, curse me them. Peradventure I shall be able to overcome them and drive them out. And God said unto Balaam, Thou shalt not go with them. Thou shalt not curse the people, for they are blessed. Now God's made his will abundantly clear, I think, at this point. He says you're not supposed to go with them. And the people that he's calling you to are ones that I have my hand on. So you can't touch them. But it says, Balaam rose early in the morning and said unto the princes of Balak, Get you into your land, for the Lord refuseth to give me leave to go with you. And the princes of Moab rose up, and they went unto Balak, and said, Balaam refuseth to come with us. And Balak sent yet again princes more and more honorable than they. And you know, sometimes that's going to happen in our life. There's going to be people that are going to be sent that are of greater prestige and power and authority sent to us with what purpose? Their desire is to buffalo you. You say, what do you mean by buffalo you? Force you into a certain direction or into a certain decision. And it's not necessarily a good decision, but oftentimes that will happen. People will send other people to you, greater, more powerful, more distinguished, more pressing. I even, it was interesting, as some of you know, the RNC was going on this week, and you know that a couple of our men were volunteering down there. And every day we were getting new posts, right, by our men, showing pictures of all these important and powerful people that they were meeting. And I think it's pretty cool that they got to meet them, you know, face to face. And yet at the same time, what are those people? They're just people. Yeah. They're just like us. They do have positions of power and authority. The hard part sometimes is to be what? To be that person that understands the role that you have. And it's not to allow those people to push you out of those positions that we stand on or those things that we believe. But it's very hard when the right people come our way and say, hey, aren't you going to jump on board with us? Aren't you going to be for this particular thing or against that particular thing? And even if you already have arguments in your mind against it, you might still do what? Change your mind because of their power, their influence, their authority, because of that position that they have in life. And so we have to be careful about that because it can get us into trouble with the most important person in this universe, and that's God himself. The God who spoke the world into existence. It says, verse 16, And they came to Balaam and said to him, Thus saith Balak the son of Zippor, Let nothing, I pray thee, hinder thee from coming unto me, for I will promote thee unto very great honor. And I will do whatsoever thou sayest unto me. Come, therefore, I pray thee, curse me this people. And Balaam answered and said, Now he had a right answer, by the way. Unfortunately, it didn't satisfy his heart. It was the right answer, but it did not satisfy his heart. He said, If Balak would give me his house full of silver and gold, I cannot go beyond the word of the Lord my God to do less or more. Now, by the way, some think that this guy was not a servant of God. I don't find anything that suggests otherwise. He is a servant of God, but he's just like us. And what is that? He's in flesh. He can be drawn by the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. And I think in this story, he is being drawn by those things. And so he says, I can't do more or less beyond what God says. In verse 19, Now therefore I pray thee, tarry ye also here this night, that I may know what the Lord will say unto me more. What has the Lord already told him? No. And he's already said, those people that you're wanting to curse are blessed, and they're my people. What more does he need to know? He doesn't need to know any more information. What he needs to do is accept God's will. You know, sometimes when God tells us what his will is, what do we start doing? We're looking for a way out of it. Yeah, but is there any exceptions to what you're saying, God? And he goes, no. I love these people. They're my people. Yeah, but I mean, what about him? What about her? Maybe that one's offended you. And we're looking for what? We're looking for some sort of exception to what God has already made quite clear. And that was a problem that Balaam had. By the way, that's a problem we have at times. When God has already made it clear what His will is for our life, and we go, I am not sure about that. Let me pray about that, right? When we already know the answer, let me pray about it. Let me seek the Lord about it. Of course, what God are we seeking at that point? Well, it's the one we've created, because it's not the God who's already given us the answer. We're seeking some other answer. And it says, God came unto Balaam at night, verse 20, and said unto him, if the men come to call thee, rise up and go with them. He did not say, I'm going to let you curse Israel. He did not say, I'm going to let you get rich. He made one statement. He said, if they come to you, you can follow them. But only if they come to you. But yet the word which I shall say unto thee, that shalt thou do. And Balaam rose up in the morning, saddled his ass, and went with the princes of Moab. It's quite clear from the scriptures that they never came back to seek him again. He sought them out. And by doing so, he defied God's will. This is going to be the beginning of the end for him, and realize that this, to my understanding, he's a child of God. Is there a sin unto death? Can we say no to God's will over and over again and have consequences from that? I'm going to answer that toward the end of this message. But the answer is absolutely. It's rhetorical right now, but the answer is absolutely. We can go against God's will, and it can cost us our life. But as you know, verse 22 says, God's anger was kindled because he went, and the angel of the Lord stood in the way for an adversary against him. Now he is riding upon an ass, and his two servants were with him. The ass saw the angel of the Lord standing in the way, and his sword drawn in his hand, and the ass turned aside out of the way and went into the field. And Balaam smote the ass to turn her into the way. So as you know, eventually God's going to open the mouth of the ass. I'm going to tell the prophet, you're an idiot. You need to listen to God. And Balaam is going to be so indignant that he's going to start yelling at the ass and talking back, which I still find incredible. Because you know what I'm talking about. I mean, this guy had to be really, really, really worked up. How many of you, if your hamster started talking to you, would start answering the hamster back? Or Rover starts talking to you and you go, you good for nothing, dog. You know, you're not going to do that if it's talking to you. But at this point, his donkey is talking to him, and he's not even skipping a beat. He's answering the donkey's questions and telling the donkey why the donkey's an idiot. And that to me tells me that he had a serious problem with anger, and he had a serious problem with submitting to God. He had both problems. But as we skip forward, and I really would like to read all this, but I'm worried about my time, and I want to get to the end of this. I want to bring you to a finale. This is not the only time, by the way, that somebody was drawn away. You say, because of why? Because they were a servant of God, and they didn't realize that they had it good, and that God was taking care of them. And they decided that they had to have more. You say, do you ever fight that? Yeah. As some of you know, I have been driving semi on and off now for about 30 years. I don't currently have a truck driving job, and there's a part of me that says, I need a truck driving job, and there's another part of me that says, for what? Right? For what? I go, because I still need to save money for retirement. And yet there's a part of me that says, but God's been taking care of me. And what's the answer right now? I honestly don't know. But I don't want to step out of His will. I don't want to do something just because in my mind it makes sense. I want to do it because God wants it. You know, if he has people I need to witness to, if he has things, you know what I mean? It's got to be for the right reasons. It's just like some of you have heard the story. When the Lord called me to plant this church and to reach the Jewish community and do some other things in my life, as he began to do that, I'd already been planning at that point to be a missionary to the Philippines. Well, once he made it clear that I was supposed to come here and do this, I gave up that dream of the Philippines, of going to the Philippines, of being a tribal missionary, etc. And then God opened a door for me to go to the Philippines. I was very leery of going to the Philippines. You say, why? Because I already knew what the will of God was. It was to be here. It was to do this work. It was to reach the people in this community. But the Lord did open the door for me to travel to the Philippines with a Jewish person. And it was pretty awesome because when I got there, the Lord just started opening door after door after door. I got to witness to a Jewish lady on my airplane while I was flying to the Philippines. I got to get in a bunch of literature into the Jewish community while I was there in the Philippines. I got to witness to the governor of the island's colonel that was in charge of his security and a bunch of other people. I mean, just a lot of good and wonderful things happened. But I wanted to be certain that it was God that was giving me that opportunity. And the best part of the whole trip was the day that, and this was right before I was going to come home. This was about a week before I came home. At this point, I probably already had amoebas, and I was about to be not very happy with my trip there. It always happens when you get in among tribal people. You're going to drink water that's not good, and you're going to have bad times. But at this point, I'm not having those bad times yet. As a matter of fact, I'm laying out in a river that's probably not a clean river, but I'm taking a bath out there with the national pastor. And we both have taken our clothes off. We're laying in a river, and we're scrubbing our skin with sand, which, believe it or not, that does take away your body odor and everything else. Takes away a layer of your skin. Works really well to clean you. But as I was doing it that night, I will never forget the Lord coming to me while I was laying out there in the river. And like I say, I had the national pastor nearby me. He was cleaning himself. I'm cleaning myself in a different part of the river. And the Lord said, yes, you could come here and do a work for me, but it isn't where I called you. And that's our faithful God. There's always going to be the temptations for us to do what? To seek something more, to seek something better, to get these promotions that we think maybe we should have, or this new job or this new situation. And I'm so grateful that by the time that I went on that trip to the Philippines, I wasn't trying to get out of God's will and say, yeah, but I've been training all these years to go there. When I finally went there, I said, God, I don't even want to go there unless you're going to do something that's inside of that area that you've already showed me, that you want me to get a church started here, or that you want me to reach Jewish people, etc. And that's why, like I say, he allowed me to have on a plane of 460 people, my stewardess on my aisle, on my row, just happened to be a Jewish person. Just happened to be. And then when I got to Manila that night, when we finally got there, and I had brought all this literature for the Jewish people there, I just happened to be asked to preach that night in a missions conference where there were 4 men that worked in the Jewish community, and they said, if you give us the literature, we'll get it out. And I'm just saying, I wasn't trying to go around God. I wasn't trying to seek my own way. And like I say, just a few days before I left there, and I was laying there in the river, the Lord made it very clear to me, and I'm just saying this is how God is good. When we are struggling with decisions, we sometimes are wondering, do I jump? Do I not jump? Do I jump? I felt real uncomfortable even being in the country, and you say, why? Not because I didn't like being there. I love the country, I love the people. But God had already made it clear it wasn't my people, it wasn't where I was supposed to go. But when I got down there and was laying in that river, we had had so much good success. I'd had so many opportunities to witness. I even had a man that after I witnessed to him, he was a very important man in the community there. After I'd witnessed to him, he asked me to take a 3.5-hour ride with him so that he could hear more of the gospel from me. I wish I could have done it, but my situation, I couldn't ride with him. But what I'm saying is God did a lot of wonderful things, and then while I'm laying in that river says what? You could do a work here. Because that's how sometimes we are, right? We're like, yeah, but maybe I could do this, maybe I could do that. And God goes, but I've got you where I want you. Why are you so dissatisfied? I've got you in a good place. I'm taking care of you. I'm providing for your needs. And we get it in our head, I just need a little more. Just a little more. A little more money. A little better situation. A little better job. A little better benefits. Right? We've always got something that we can be chasing to be dissatisfied about. There was a young man that worked with a very famous prophet, and I don't think I've got enough time to read the whole passage, but there was a man named Naaman, and he was a general for the king of Syria, and he had leprosy. But he had a little Jewish servant girl who said, there's somebody who can heal you. And he goes there to get healed. And when he goes to get healed, that's where we'll skip to. This is over in 2 Kings chapter 5. It says in verse 13, and I wish we could go through all this. There's just so much good stuff in here. It's a wonderful story. I love this story. But we don't have enough time, so I gotta make it fast. His servants came near him, and this is Naaman the general, and spake unto him, saying, My father, if the prophet had bid thee to do some great thing, wouldest thou have done it? How much rather then when he saith to thee, Wash and be clean? And of course he's upset. He's been told to wash in the Jordan River. If you've never seen the Jordan River, and I know that's true of some of you that you've never seen it, it's always muddy. It's a very small river. And it's always washing down from Lebanon down. There are at least 3 natural springs that come out of the mountains there that feed the Jordan River. But as soon as it starts feeding down the Jordan Valley there, it gets muddy rather quickly. By the time you get down to the Sea of Galilee, and especially by the time you get to the Dead Sea, it's just full of all kinds of silt. So it's a very, very muddy river. And he insists, he said, why can't I just go home? Abana and Pharpar, by the way, are 2 rivers that also come out of the same mountains of Mount Hermon. And they're also spring-fed. But they're clear. They're clean water. And he's upset. Why is the prophet making me go into this dirty water to do this certain thing? And his servant said, if he'd have asked you to do some great feat, you'd have been willing to. Why aren't you willing to just go get in this muddy water that God's told you to get into, and you're going to be healed? It says in verse 14, Then went he down and dipped himself 7 times in the Jordan, according to the saying of the man of God, and his flesh came again like unto the flesh of a little child, and he was clean. And he returned to the man of God, he and all his company, and came and stood before him and said, Behold, now I know that there is no God in all the earth but in Israel. Now therefore I pray thee, take a blessing of thy servant. But he said, As the Lord liveth, before whom I stand, I will receive none. And he urged him to take it, but he refused. Now he's doing this for a reason. God does not want the prophet to take any kind of donation from this guy, because he wants him to understand that this is the grace of God. This is not a I'll give you money, you give me this thing that I want. And the prophet has made that quite plain, that he's not willing to take any payment for it because it's a gift from the Lord. It's because of God's grace. And he urged him to take it, but he refused. And Naaman said, Shall there not then, I pray thee, be given to thy servant 2 mules burden of earth? For thy servant will henceforth offer neither burnt offering nor sacrifice unto the other gods, but unto the Lord. And he said, No, he's still not taking anything. And then the man even says, I will bow down to help my master bow down in the temple of these other gods, but understand, I'm not bowing down to these gods. He said, I hope that you understand that, and I hope that's all right. And the prophet said, do as you understand. He says, Go in peace, verse 19, so he departed from him. But Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, the man of God, said, Behold, my master hath spared Naaman this Syrian in not receiving at his hands that which he brought. But as the Lord liveth, I will run after him and take somewhat of him. Uh-oh. We can be that way. We can get it in our mindset we're missing out. Maybe the Lord wants me to become profited by this person or that person, or this person can do these wonderful things for me. We need to be careful of that because it starts small. And suddenly, the next thing you know, we're chasing after all this. And our life has gone a very different direction than what God had planned for us, all because of what? Little temptations here, little temptations there to take this or to take that. And by the way, sometimes these things are pretty innocuous. I think in this particular story, it was important that they took nothing. And you say, why? God wanted this infidel guy who didn't know anything about God to understand who God is. He's a God of grace and mercy. And that could not be demonstrated if he were to actually take a reward. And so even though it was a normal thing for a prophet to take a reward in these days, Elisha knew it wasn't appropriate at this time because the man needed to understand that it was God who did it, and God did it out of his grace and mercy, not out of a payback. You give me some of these wonderful possessions of the earth that I already own, and I'll give you healing. Because that's how he could have viewed it. He could have viewed, well, I've done something for God. And God's like, no, you can't do anything for me anyway. I own it all. I own it all. So Gehazi followed after Naaman. When he saw him running after him, he lighted down from the chariot to meet him. And of course, what does he do? He takes 2 talents of gold, 2 talents of silver, 2 changes of garments, laid them upon 2 of his servants, and they bear them before him. Takes all this stuff, and then what does he do? He goes and hides it. And of course, his master says, where you been? And he said, nowhere. And he said, yeah, you have. You chased after Naaman, and you took of him. And he said unto him, verse 26, went not mine heart with thee when the man turned again from his chariot to meet thee? Is it a time to receive money and to receive garments and olive yards and vineyards and sheep and oxen, men servants and maidservants? The leprosy therefore of Naaman shall cleave unto thee and unto thy seed forever. And he went out from his presence a leper as white as snow. Now, by the way, that was the main problem that happened in the previous story we were talking about with Balaam. How do we know that? Balaam is actually one of the most quoted examples in the New Testament. I should finish this with this because I promised you I'd do this. What eventually happened to Balaam? Remember, he took all these rewards of divination? And God didn't want him to go in the first place. Yeah, in Joshua chapter 13, verse 22, Balaam also the son of Beor, the soothsayer, did the children of Israel slay with the sword among them that were slain by them. When they slew all the other people of that land, they also slew him. Did he end up getting to enjoy all the rewards of divination? No, he didn't. God didn't want him to have them in the first place. God didn't even want him to go there and bless the children of Israel, curse them or anything. He had no business there. He had no job there. And yet he was searching out and seeking out these things that God did not want for him. In 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 14, of course, you know we're going to be going into 2 Peter. 1 Peter, 2 Peter, we're also in Jude right now on Sundays. But having eyes full of adultery, says 2 Peter 2:14, that cannot cease from sin, beguiling unstable souls, and heart they have exercised with covetous practices. Covetous practices. You know, you can actually train your heart to want more, and to want more, and to want more, and to never be satisfied. Cursed children. Which have forsaken the right way, and are gone astray, following the way of Balaam, the son of Bosor, who loved the wages of unrighteousness. What's the wages of unrighteousness? Realize that the man of God, the woman of God, has the right to be blessed by other people that they have helped and blessed and taken care of. I'm not against that, by the way. If you do something for other people and they want to give you a blessing for it, that's fine. But sometimes what do? We begin to chase after that stuff. You know what I mean? That respect, that honor, that authority, those opportunities to be around the bigwigs, the special people, the high and the mighty people. And that can become a desire of our heart. Why? Because we give in to some of those little temptations here and there, little soft choices towards having some kind of blessing, having some kind of good thing happen in our lives. They have forsaken the right way and are gone astray, following the way of Balaam the son of Besor, who loved the wages of unrighteousness, but was rebuked for his iniquity. The dumbass, speaking with man's voice, forbade the madness of the prophet. Why do you say madness? Because he's out of his mind. The best place we can be is in the will of God. And now he's chasing after money and blessings and all these things that so-called might be added to his life. Over in the book of Jude, verses 10 and 11 say this, but they speak evil of those things in which they know not, but what they know naturally as brute beasts, and those things they corrupt themselves. Woe unto them, for they have gone in the way of Cain, and ran greedily after the error of Balaam for what? Reward. We don't serve God for reward. We occasionally get rewards in serving God, and that's all right. As some of you know, this year when we went to Boston, I got a little plaque thing up there that they acknowledged me for being years and years of going there. I don't know, it's 25 years or so that I've been going there helping with that tent meeting. So this year was their 40th tent meeting, and I got a little plaque up there that says, we've been having this for 40 years, and you've been here for a lot of years helping us with this, which I have, about 25 years. And that's all right, but we're not to seek out those things. That's not what we're living for. It's all right once in a while to have those things happen in your life. But if you let those affect you to where now I begin to seek out those things, and I'm constantly wanting somebody to say, hey, you're wonderful. Here, let me do this for you. Let me help you in this way. Let me give you this. Now all of a sudden, what are we going to be affected by? We're going to be seeking out these things. And we have to be very careful. Because as the children of God, we want to be in God's will and not chasing after the treasures of this earth. Over in Luke chapter 3 and verse 14, Jesus warned the soldiers there that were talking to him. The soldiers likewise demanded of him, saying, what shall we do as soldiers? How shall we follow you? And he said unto them, do violence to no man, neither accuse any falsely, and be content with your wages. Be content with what you have. Don't be always looking for more. Because you realize as a soldier, you had a lot of opportunities. You could take advantage of people as a Roman soldier. When you came into a town, there were times when you could take advantage of what was going on around you and profit thereby. And he said, don't do that. That's not the way you're supposed to live. In Philippians chapter 4 and verse 10, Paul says, but I rejoice in the Lord greatly, that now at the last your care of me hath flourished again, wherein you were also careful, but ye lacked opportunity. Not that I speak in respect of want, for I have learned in whatsoever state I am, therewith to be content. And sometimes that's hard to do, right? Yeah, but what if I've lost all my stuff? What if my car blew up? What if somebody drove a stolen car through the side of my garage and took away all my tools and 2 of my cars and blew my little model tabernacle into toothpicks? Whatsoever state I am, therewith to be content. There are going to be bad things that are going to happen in our life, but again, they shouldn't change our motivations, shouldn't change the way that we live, shouldn't cause us to suddenly say, well, now I'm going to have to go at this even harder to make sure that I can make up for all this lost time. You don't have any lost time. You have a God who you're supposed to be serving. And if you need to so-called make up lost time, does he know how to do that? Yeah. He could cause somebody in your family or a friend or a relative to leave something for you if that was so important in your life. But sometimes, like I say, we chase after things to the neglect of God himself. And then we end up having the rewards. And to me, we see several of those in this story. We see that the Moabites were a people of Lot, and Lot was somebody the Bible calls righteous. And yet his entire descendants all get wiped out because they chose not to follow God. And they chose to be against the people of God. That's a dangerous place to get to. They were seeking after the wrong kind of things. They thought if they could take out the people of God, then they could have more. They didn't understand that God's plan was that those people were going to have more. You need to be on board with them. By the way, that's why we ought to be pro-Israel, right? It's not because of their righteousness, by the way, because many of the Jewish people are not righteous. But they're still God's people, and He still has a plan for them. And if we're going to be on God's side, we ought to be pro that God wants to do something with His people. And He is going to call them all back, and they are going to someday be righteous, and they are someday going to walk in His ways, and they are someday going to embrace the new covenant. It's going to be exciting days. And I'm saying as a whole, all the people will. Right now, it's just a few here and there, but there's coming a day when they're all going to embrace His truth. So we need to be on God's side. He says in Hebrews chapter 13 and verse 5, let your conversation, that's your lifestyle, be without covetousness, and be content with such things as you have. For He has said, I will never leave thee, nor forsake thee. So that we may boldly say, the Lord is my helper, and I will not fear what man shall do unto me. The Lord is my helper. Amen? The Lord is my helper. That's the message tonight. Amen? Parsha Balak.